So yeah.
So we've got an interesting one on the dyno today. It's a Td5 with a tune that's over 20 years old. One that we mapped 20 years ago. And look what it's made, 167 horsepower and 378 newtons of torque. And the delivery is, it's not perfect, it's not a perfect curve, but I think for all those years ago, I think well done really. And it's coming today. Lovely little Defender 90 Td5. Customers owned this since forever basically. And it's coming, and we're going to do some improvements on it. So I just had a brief catch up with the customer just to double check we've got the spec right for the vehicle. So it's 15P engine with a Britpart intercooler, standard air filter. So we're looking to extract some more performance from this one today. But also we want to keep the emissions nice and clean. This one does smoke a little bit, but I think we can make more power than this. But with cleaner emissions, essentially less smoke from the exhaust. So before the remap is burnt to the ECU, reflashed to the ECU, what we want to do is add a little bit more boost, and the way to do that on a Td5 is to add some preload to the actuator, which is here. Basically what we'd do is we would shorten off this rod here by adding some preload, and by adding preload it stops the wastegate from opening so soon and increases boost. So we only want to increase a little bit, so we'll start off perhaps by reducing the threads on that actuator arm there by around 2 threads. So just essentially a small display of how we strap the vehicles to the dyno. A lot of people often ask, how do you secure the vehicle on the dyno? How does it just sit there? Well, it's strapped there, and we basically latch onto the axles. We have some adjustment on the floor here to be able to go to the chassis. Obviously, we run all different types of vehicles on the dyno, and this just gives us a bit more room. The rear of the vehicle. Essentially, this is how the vehicles are strapped on, secured, and the extraction for the exhaust is up outside the premises. So we now have a remap flash to the ECU, and we just started up the engine, and going to go ahead and warm up the engine before we get ready for power testing. So when we are power testing, we actually use an Anacom for logging the data, the engine data. Tells us all of the temperatures, pressures and values. So that's a strange one. Yeah, the vehicle just cut out essentially. The customer tells me, yes, it does that. Thank you. So yeah, customer tells me that it does this sometimes. So having looked at the codes on the ECU there's some from noisy crank and injector 1, 2 and I think it was 1, 2 and 5 open circuit. We'll try again, but it could be the vehicle needs a harness, or it could be something, one of a million things. It's a motor vehicle. So do another pull now. Vehicle's still got some good temperature into it. cut out. So what I saw at the top of the rev range just after about 4,200 was that when the engine cut out, before the engine cut out, the engine speed actually read 0 and then 2,000 and then it cut out. So what does that tell us? Potentially it's a crank signal fault, crank sensor fault. There was a code for noisy crank signal, so we'll have a look at that sensor. Quite a dirty crank sensor there, so we'll get that cleaned up, we'll have another go. So this is our second revision to the mapping, and we're just about to do another test to see if we can find some more power. Still really clean on the exhaust, so very ultra low emissions, nice and clean, no smoke. We're making more power. There we go, so a wide open throttle now. Cut out again, engine's cut out completely. Cycle the ignition, it starts up. It's on a mission there as well. You're definitely going to see those improvements. So I've got another 1,000 RPM to go and was already found a good chunk of horsepower. Yeah, so we've got the faults with the crank sensor at the minute, which Will's just swapping out a genuine crank sensor. But as you can see, these bold lines here, this is horsepower, and the two dotted lines. The thin line here is what it came in with. The dotted line is our earlier revision. As you can see, we're on a mission here to make some more horsepower. We're up to 174 horsepower, and as you can see, improvements in the torque, more from the word go, and an awful lot of torque here gained, and it's holding in stronger as well. So hopefully we can figure out this crank sensor fault, or this vehicle cutting out, engine cutting out fault, and we can prove some healthy results later. It's looking like it could be around 180 horsepower. So what we found earlier on was that a non-genuine crank sensor was giving us some problems in the higher RPM, in the higher rev range, and we swapped out to a genuine one, a used genuine one, spare one that we had in the workshop, and this little 90 is now behaving itself quite well. So one new crank sensor later, genuine one, and we're back up and running. So let's have a pull with the new revision. So yeah, just finished power testing with the after a couple of revisions of the map file there. We've ended up with 175, just under 400 newtons of torque. So what you're looking at there is the current mapping, and also what it came in with in the background. So there's an overlay there essentially. Another screen here with potentially better. So from the start of the pull, we've got gains in performance, in power and torque, in horsepower and torque, right from the word go, from the moment we press the throttle, all the way throughout. So much stronger on the torque, which holds an awful lot longer as well. And we're all looking forward to a road test with this one, let's put it that way. So those figures again, 175 and 400. So for those that are looking at these graphs and are not sure what exactly is what, so you've got red, brake horsepower, orange is torque, blue is power at the wheels, being a chassis dyno, the only part of the vehicle that's actually connected to the dyno is actually the tyre, so we measure power at the wheels. We then measure the drag from the vehicle, which the drag is measured from the point we lift and then, well, the drag is measured from the point where we finish the power test and we coast down. The vehicle measures losses, and our losses are applied to wheel horsepower, which gives you your brake horsepower. Just to summarise on the vehicle we've had on the dyno today, we've found 20 newtons of torque as a peak value and 10 horsepower. But most importantly, we're cleaner on the emissions. And what I actually mean by emissions is less smoke, an awful lot less smoke. So that's what we're aiming to do. Some green tuning. There's always a point when you do get horsepower wise when it's not acceptable, but definitely at this sort of level of power, 175 horsepower, 400 newtons, there's no reason why you can't produce that with it having very clean emissions from the exhaust.